Hi, uh, welcome. I think it's episode 23. Yeah, Guest Safety Officer Lobby Group. And we've got, yes, the ever-present, apparently so, Ronnie Megaughin. He's here. Now, you will notice that Gary is not. And Gary should hang his head in shame because if you recall, he actually forgot who Ronnie was
Yeah.
the last time. I mean, I don't know, Ronnie. I'd be upset about that. But actually, Ronnie, young Gary's away doing his EMT, emergency medical technicians, final exams, where he's going to then be able to go and practice on human beings in an ambulance. So if you're in Devon or the Exeter area, don't get hurt. That's all I can say. Right, Ronnie,
Yeah.
busy time. How's Purda been?
Well, it's now finished, isn't it? Can I just say that I feel deeply let down that Gary isn't here today, given that, yeah, he did forget me, and I thought this might be the opportunity for him to actually just apologise in person regarding that. But I'll accept it will come sometime, and I look forward to it. Yeah, Purda's
I
gone.
can't believe he
So,
forgot you, mate. I
no,
just
neither can I. Neither can I. It occasionally does happen in life, and we all need to get by in relation to it, don't we? We accept it, we move on. Yeah.
no, I don't. I'm never gonna let him forget.
Well, I'll leave that up to you, Ian, but feel free, yes, to remind him on a regular basis. Absolutely. So,
Older.
yeah, so Purda's clearly now finished, Ian. So we're back in a position where, yeah, as a public body, I can have a free and frank conversation with you regarding matters that are affecting the private security industry.
So, well, it's been quite busy because I know you've had a couple of things really on hold, haven't you?
Yeah, so in essence, from a publication perspective, yes, we've had things on hold. But as you would expect, we've continued to work, develop, and build in relation to, yeah, a couple of topics, which you're going to tell me what those are, Ian, and then, yeah, you're going to ask me about them, I
Uh,
think. Probably, yeah, it's normally how it works in this, isn't it?
it is funnily enough, right? So there are three things that I want to basically catch up today because I'm aware of the time and I'm grateful for the fact that you've given us it. The first one is Paul Fullwood's released a letter regarding Operation Benchmark. Then there's been the ACS update, which Michelle Russell, who I saw at the UK, the Security Journal UK Leaders Conference yesterday, touched on. Consultation is out, and we also have the ongoing work that I believe is being done with the HMRC. So, if we could go first to Operation Benchmark,
Yep.
do you think that'd be a good place to start?
Yeah, let's go with benchmark first, Ian. Yeah, yeah. So clearly, publication yesterday. I think that's maybe the third or fourth one that's come out from it. So Paul, yeah, leading in relation to that. But what I think will be clear to everybody in the industry, everybody who's got a knowledge of the industry and a knowledge of the qualification requirements within the industry will know is that um, addressing the issue of, let's call it training malpractice in its widest form here, to include fraudulent practice as well. But just for ease of conversation, let's
Yeah.
call it training malpractice in its widest form. Isn't an issue that a sole agency or a sole individual or a sole body can resolve. There's a number of stakeholders in this landscape, and it's absolutely vital. I think Paul's emphasised this on a number of occasions. It's absolutely vital that it's a collective approach. So at the end of the day, if you think about this, Ian, so fundamentally, the biggest risk that comes out of this. So, yeah, as a consequence of fraudulent practice, etc., some people may lose money, of course, and that's damaging on a personal level. But the purpose of these qualifications is to prepare people And I know you have your own views in terms of quality and everything else, but that's to prepare people with basic requirements that once done, once qualified in relation to, enable them then, along with other checks, of course, but enable them to make application for an SIA license, to ultimately end up guarding property, guarding individuals, safeguarding individuals, etc., etc. All the roles that security undertakes across the UK. And that's a foundation stone. I've had this conversation with you before. That's a foundation stone of public protection. And if you don't get the foundations right, we know what happens with everything that's built on top of it, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just to pick up and I hopefully emphasize these the basic qualifications. And I agree, I will argue all the time for competence over compliance, etc., and competencies. But we are dealing with public safety, public people's actual lives depend on our ability to keep them safe. And that's what I found, when I was reading through Paul's letter, quite interesting, because it seems to be moving the dial. Am I wrong?
No. If I'm picking you up right, Ian, it's not moving the dial. I think what it's doing is it's taking a refreshed and refocused look at some of the issues which are clearly present within that training provision, and saying, well, look, no longer is it acceptable. And I'm not saying this has been the approach in the past. We draw a line in the sand and say, is it acceptable to allow that risk to be present within the provision of security services? If we know about it, we need to tackle it. A problem known, you need to take it on, you need to address it. Now, smart thinking in that particular setting would say that, okay, we probably need to take a slightly new, refreshed, and revised look at this. And that's why, Paul's emphasized in his messaging and in all the work that's been done up until this point, that it needs to be a partnership. Because the different stakeholders have a different vested interest in this. But ultimately, it should all aim towards competent individuals, and I get that, but competent individuals who have undergone the full training course, understand and been assessed in relation to that. And then the really important bit, and this is the crux of it, that they can deliver that in the settings in which they're deployed. Now, everybody knows that people have different levels of ability. Of course they do, different levels of comprehension, etc. So there'll be some people who are more skilled than others. Of course there will. There'll be some who are more confident in the delivery of that service. Of course there will. But each and every one of them must have reached that standard that's set to even be considered for an SIA license. And that's critical, that we get to a point that the public and all other interested parties have confidence that that regime that delivers that training is, as best as possibly can be achieved, is protected from poor practice and fraudulent and criminal practice. But, and the last point I'll make, Ian, just before you come in, again, is there's money involved. And where there's money involved, people will seek to exploit criminal opportunity. It's what happens. Whether it's done on an individual basis or it's done on an organized basis, people will look to circumvent rules and maximize profit. And that I think we're all coming to terms with that it's not enough just to know now. We really need to, at this point in time, get together in a collective and collegiate way and look at how we can address it. And it's not going to be an overnight turning round, but it needs to be a prolonged and focused period of work.
Is it just and obviously totally agree with you, Ronnie. And as you know, I have been nagging on about this for best part of 20 years overall about training, fraud, malpractice, whatever way you want to call it. What's interesting, the thing that I picked up particularly from this is this discussion, the ongoing discussion that you've been having with Ofqual, the awarding organisations themselves. If I'm wrong, just here, but I get the sense that this is about trying to make them realise that security, protective service qualifications sit outside a normal educational framework on the basis that lives matter. This is a public safety matter. You can't skip this because somebody may die. Have I got that? Is that the direction these conversations have been going on?
Well, I think certainly from the SIA's point of view, I don't think we will ever underestimate the importance of those qualifications. Now, we as a regulated body have never hidden the fact that clearly it would be good if individual employers, organisations, etc., expanded, enhanced, and built on those qualifications, depending on what maybe a bespoke requirement or what maybe a commercial benefit to sell. So we would never hide from that. But having the basics in place, absolutely. The content of the training, which has been subject to periodic review, as you know, Ian, refreshment and updating. I know it doesn't satisfy everybody, I get that, but it's almost impossible to keep everybody happy all the time. But it's deemed appropriate for the settings that people find themselves in. And I think flip that and look at it from a public point of view. And I say this from 30 years in policing in a past life. I know what public expectation is, and I know how big a pressure public expectation places on individuals. But for a lot of people, there is an expectation that security operative in front of them is capable of doing certain things. And what we've tried to do is marry those qualifications, those skills, and those attributes that you can achieve through that short modular provision, at least provides the basics for that individual to be able to do. And it won't always match public expectation. I absolutely get that. But it should go some way towards providing the public the confidence that that person can respond within the lawfulness of their actions, of course. So they clearly come out of the course understanding what lawful actions are. So yeah,
But it is a difficult balance, isn't it? Trying to get that. Yeah, and as you know, I'd love to. Whilst I am obviously an SIA fanboy and totally believe that even if the SIA didn't exist, we would still need to have something else in place to make that, to make these regulations come to life. I think the point that you make at the end of that as well about the isolation that often occurs with new security operatives, guest safety officers, is that they are then treated as though that, oh right, yeah, you've ticked all these boxes, right? You can go and do this now, without being given the additional mentoring and support to actually learn how to do the job in reality to gain that practical experience.
Yeah, Ian, an individual who does medicine at university and comes out having passed the degree course is rarely going to be as equipped as a clinician who spent 20 years in the world of practice, are they?
No.
And that's people need to understand that this is a pathway in employment, or it should be a pathway in employment. And the vast majority of people absolutely will hone and build on those skills the more they are exposed during their deployment. But each and every one of them should at least have that fundamental, knowledge and skill that comes out of the license link qualification training. The absence of that poses the biggest risk. Then you actually have people who are licensed So for all intents and purposes, have passed all of the checks and balances, are there and are suitable for deployment. That to me is a significant risk, because nobody differentiates where they're going to deploy them. So they could be the individual who's at a festival who's faced with a vulnerable young person having a traumatic experience through over intoxication, whatever it might be, and without even the basics to reflect on, that person's incapable of dealing with that situation. That's a frightening prospect. So some people might be better at dealing with vulnerability than others. I get that. That's always going to be the case. That's human nature. That's it. But being entirely incapable because you have no training at all or limited training, poses a significant risk. And that's why you made the point, Ian, about if the SIA didn't exist, there would still need to be something that said this is actually a requirement. This is a level of competence that we would seek. Of course it is. Of course it is. Regulation wasn't just about chasing criminals out the industry. That's not what regulation's about. Regulation's about setting those standards and ensuring those standards are maintained or improved upon. I always say to people, look no further than the statutory functions within the Private Security Industry Act. For all its potential ills, look no further than the functions. And those are the foundations of good regulation in terms of private security industry. And it's, in part, large parts for the SIA to clearly deliver. Those are our functions. But to make those meaningful and realistic in the world of 430,000 people now, roughly. I think we're nearly at that number, the number who are licensed out there. So, yeah.
It's interesting. It's interesting, Ronnie, in terms of when you look at it, and the constant refrain that I've had since, talking to you, before talking to you and the SIA thing, is the ability to communicate that, that is still what I consider to be one of the biggest issues that the SIA has. Because, as you know, when I came up and, did that talk, which was really interesting from my perspective as well, to hear to learn that there is so much good stuff, so much unseen, and that is, as I say, the problem, unseen stuff that's going on in the background that nobody hears about. It's like, it's like the swan and the feet are going like this underneath. The SIA appears to be, oh yeah, not a problem really, when it it's working so hard.
In fairness, I think you've had the opportunity clearly to have conversations with myself, got conversations with other people in the senior leadership team within the SIA. So it's good that that's your reflection on that. It's good that that's your takeaway from it. Because what we don't do, and what realistically we can't do, is a public announcement on a daily basis about everything we're doing. There is a bit of this. We do ask, please have some faith. But we're not this, faceless, silent organization that sits behind walls and never ever manages to make known what we do. And I think certainly over the last piece, and it's interesting you mentioned clearly Michelle, our CEO, being at a couple of conference events that you've been at and speaking at those. That more and more now is the current position. We're happy to go out and we're happy to say what it is we're doing within the limits of what we can on many occasions discuss. But we're happy to say what we're doing. We're happy to say how we're addressing those issues. And I think the other thing is just as a positive reflection there is that, we're listening as well. So these wouldn't be on our radar unless we were listening. So we are listening in respect of that. We're an organisation driven through intelligence. So, concerns come in, there's a whole variety of different sources. Those then get analysis done, et cetera, looking at the mechanics of all of that, and they come out for activity. And we channel our focus through that activity. So I'm hoping that, the idea kind of like that, we're almost impotent in this world is so far from the truth.
That's that's the point. And it is an awful thing to say, and it is awful for you to have to contend with, but it is, whether we like it or not, it is a view that is widely held about this, lack of visibility. And that's the thing. And you're right, I am lucky and have been very lucky in terms of having conversations, as is Gary, who will never forget your name again, Ronnie. I will make sure of that. Saying we have had that opportunity, and yesterday, just as an example, Michelle turned up with a newly minted Ned, SIA Ned in tow, Duncan. What a lovely guy.
Yeah.
And he was coming out his first time, and he was just getting used to it. But that engagement I think is really, really useful. Talking of engagement, because I am aware of time, just want to talk about move on if we can, unless you've got any points that you want to finish on that side.
Just to say that this is still work in progress. We're making great strides in terms of that, Ian, but it does rely on a partnership, and it relies on all of those people with a vested interest stepping up and saying this is the part we can play. And that's we've got some interesting work coming up in the next kind of 2 or 3 weeks around about that, and that should give us a more consolidated position there and hopefully a common understanding, a common purpose. So it's moving forward.
I think you're right, but everyone well, I know you're right, but everybody does. The frustration that I do know everybody has is that for those people that are out there on the ground trying to do the right thing, trying to train people the right way, trying to operate their businesses in terms of deployment, etc., in the right way, and doing that, the feeling, as I said, rightly or wrongly, is that you get punished for trying to do the right thing. And that's not, and I want to just make clear, this isn't necessarily, it's not just the SIAs. When you look at almost anything to do where you're looking for some kind of retribution, justice, criminal activity, around my local estate, etc., trying to get hold of a police officer, you're wasting your time. It's not that they don't care. It's just that resources are what they are. But I want to move on to ACS if we can.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so interesting. And there's a nice bridge between the two, Ian. And that bridge is when you look at, and it's public protection.
Yeah.
So when you look at the consultation returns, so the business approval scheme, the new scheme that will replace the current approved contractor scheme. So work ongoing, consultation finished now, and the results have been publicised. So actually quite a high level of engagement from those who responded to that consultation. In terms of public consultations, actually, whilst it might not seem like a big number of respondents, for those who know about public consultations, we actually did very well. 78% of those respondents in favour of a greater focus on public protection. So there you are, that's your bridge, Ian, from what we've just been talking about and what we're going to talk about now and what we're going to talk about in our third item as well, because that's the thread that runs through it all.
Yeah, I mean, so what's as you say, 76% of businesses apparently, should disclose, should disclose all regulated services and demonstrate requirements are met through their operations. It's a big question. I'm not entirely sure what that. It's getting at.
Did you not fill out a consultation response? I'm most disappointed that you and Gary didn't.
I filled it. I filled these things in, but we're talking about when was that? About 18 months ago. That the trouble with all consultations is that by the time the results come out, people have either died, or they've forgotten what's going on.
What a dreadful thought.
But they probably have, you know. I'm 70. Well, sorry, 70. I'm 67. I could next month, by the way, not now. Save that chalk. You can draw an outline around me later. But the bottom line is that it takes so long to gather, and to be fair, I remember when I did the communications report for the SIA in 2011, I think it was. That took ages as well. You know, just together get a suitable sample size, because otherwise you're not really saying anything, are you?
No, but that's accepted. I think it was 405 responses, which is actually a good number for public consultation. I think the interesting point, though, is just about that 78% saying that a greater focus on public protection would be beneficial in the new scheme. I think that reflects the views and thoughts within the SIA as well. Not to say that those haven't been prevalent in the past, but they've probably been articulated more strongly in the recent past. You know, if you think about the current approved contractor scheme is a quality assessment tool. It's not a compliance tool effectively. So it's heavily weighted towards quality assessment. And that's because it was brought in with that model as its intention. So now that the pendulum has somewhat swung, I think that the focus is much greater in terms of public protection now. That we need to have a scheme which reflects that. And it's now down to Jane and Tim and the team responsible for the delivery of that to look at the consultation results and say, so how does that shape the next phase now as they further distill down and define and refine the criteria for it. But the other points I'm just making very quickly, if you look at in terms of the percentage, so the items which got the highest percentage of in favour. So interestingly, compliance with HMRC rules and regulations, so I think it was 16%. Then we had skills, so focus on skills was about 13%. And then I think the other one was around about labour provision and subcontracting was 11%. So those were the highest three. So that, and given that the vast majority of the respondents were from the private security industry, I think that's a good kind of snapshot of the kind of views within the industry about where the scheme could benefit public protection.
I think I think you're right, and it's just, well, I don't think you're right. I know you're right, you know, sort of, because it is. It's what's interesting though, you know, from the couple of bits where I've been part of the new ACS development of sat on those, you know, sat in on those webinars, has been this desire to move to a more business focused delivery model, so that can you do not can, you know, not say I can do this, you know, and get one guard in one contract, you know, on one site, you know, and that gets me my ACS. You know, that you need to now do more than that.
Yeah, and strengthening eligibility criteria, absolutely. I'm going to say that because I kind of sit on this. So if there's a kind of invisible line in the middle of the SIA, and kind of I'm in the Inspection and Enforcement Directorate, and I come from a lengthy policing background. So my mind is always focused towards that. Yeah, how do we reduce criminal opportunity? How do we reduce opportunity for non-compliance, non-conformance in relation to the approved contractor scheme? How do we design in those steps that make that much easier to achieve? So obviously, that my mind goes heavily towards that side. But there's equally the other side, which is how do you make it attractive? How do you ensure that it's not overly burdensome for businesses? How does it encourage growth? All of these things need to be considered as well. So it's getting both sides of that equation right. That's the key. That's the big task for the team going forwards, is to ensure that that balance is struck. And what we have is ultimately a scheme which absolutely can quantify its contribution towards public protection, can articulate that, can easily define that, but allows businesses also to take the opportunity for growth as well. And that's really, really important.
I think I think it's interesting, the piece that you've just said there was actually reflected in one of the sessions yesterday at the leaders conference, in that the difficulty that any security function has in justifying its existence.
Yeah.
And the key and the answer that was essentially given was that the ability for that security function, and that would also apply equally to the SIA and what it needs to do to sell itself within within the security environment, is that balance. How do we demonstrate to you as a as a little section within a company, or as a regulator, to the wider wider society, that you're actually giving positive positive contribution to the bottom line, as it were.
So, and I think, I think across the piece, so the SIA are going to, we have our 20th anniversary event next week in London. So
I didn't get invited, by the way.
No, I wasn't on the organising committee, and I made no comment. And what I would say is, I think the SIA has actually been pretty good about assessing change that's necessary and change that's happening, and trying to ensure that it's match fit to actually deal with that. And some of that is fundamental changes which may take place in the industry, let's be honest, over the next 10 to 15 years. Technology has advanced at such an incredible rate. Sites that used to have to be guarded, and this is not me making a comment on the pros or cons, benefits or otherwise, but the reality is sites that used to have physical presence on them can now be done, as we know, by CCTV systems linked into a response model, all these sorts of things. So, technology will advance even further. All the conversations about artificial intelligence just now, wow, it's fantastically interesting stuff. And where it can lead to, I don't think there's any boundaries, to be honest. So yeah, we as the regulator need to continue to be mindful of all of that. And our horizon scanning needs to be really important. An example of that, it's not all that long ago since the SIA started its first criminal prosecution. That didn't happen at the creation of the SIA. But clearly there was a need for that. Compliance couldn't be achieved in certain circumstances. Next step, the continuum moves along. Criminal investigations, and we've just recently now got money laundering powers as well. So that's a reflection on a changing environment. As I said to you, criminality is focused around about power and money. That's what happens. People seek one of those two or both. And we need to be in a position where we can address that. And we'll continue to do that, continue to look at the landscape, how we face it from a regulatory perspective, and what additional tools or powers that we think we need in there, and then go into negotiation to see if we can get them. But I think the business approval scheme, just going back to that, because that's our topic, business approval scheme, I think, it's quite an exciting time in terms of that, because it really can be quite a marked difference and quite a marked move from where we are in terms of the approved contractor scheme, which has served us well. I know there's defaulters out there, there's critics. I've always been a great advocate of the scheme, as long as we internally ensure eligibility criteria is sufficient to stop people coming in for the purposes of exploiting it. So,
and there always will be, won't there, Ronnie? For exactly the thing you said, criminals are always going to look for any opportunity that they can do to ply their trade, as it were.
Absolutely.
But just sort of, obviously it would, a little bit of push. I think what we need to sort of put this in from my perspective as an external, from an external view, is that the pace of change that I require that business requires. Will never be the pace of change that you and the SIA, via the SIA, can ever deliver, because you're always caught in a snapshot of time. Something happens, policies are then put in place which take time to develop. The various checks and balances need to be, by which time we've moved on and the photograph's changed, and that's inevitable.
Yeah, I'd listen, and you know, we have a public duty in terms of how money's spent as well. So chasing ghosts and going down rabbit holes sometimes isn't the best way to do things. So we need to be sure that the problem that appears to be present, we need to ensure that that is the problem, that we've got the nature of that problem properly defined.
Yeah.
That we look at the potential means by which to address that in the most efficient and effective way. And shouting for people to be publicly flogged and dragged off streets and everything else, unfortunately, not only is it not in our gift, despite your support for that, it's not in our gift, and very unlikely to ever be in our gift, quite honestly. So we need to look at smart solutions. And you know what? But joking aside, I always say that when you look at how smallpox was eradicated, it was reducing. That's how crime reduction works. You reduce the opportunity within the landscape, and you almost throttle that criminal desire. And that involves a lot of partnership work, but with the industry in this instance and everything else, to ensure that opportunities are not as prevalent as they may be today. So in a year's time, in 18 months' time, those opportunities have been reduced. Now, we need to be as agile as those who are trying to exploit opportunity. Of course we do, and sometimes we move at a slightly slower pace. I get that. But that's the public sector in some respects. I do accept that. I do accept
Slightly
that.
slower.
I'll go for slightly.
Zimmer
I'll
frame.
go for slightly.
But I just want to sort of get back to this ACS piece before we move on to the sort of the final section. Is that for me the ACS, you see, is that properly constructed, it should be, or business approvals in the act, and who knows if business licensing may now resurface under this government. I've got my fingers crossed here, because I've got a tenner on it, if you remember. The bottom.
That's whippy enough. No idea.
Well, all I'm saying is that the set it should be set up. You should want to be part of it as a company. You should absolutely embrace it, design, because you know that it's going to bring you business. Companies, buyers of security should, in my view, it should be so good, that they want it because they understand that what the police try and do at their level, what security does is it helps facilitate civilized space, that we don't live in Maslow's basement, that we're actually there, and in doing so we create the foundations for business to take place, social economy, enjoyment, life, in all its various guises, other than criminals, by the way.
Absolutely.
Who we can't throttle that much, but to take place. So do you think we're actually heading that way?
Okay, I think there's three component parts to the perfect pie here. So us fulfilling a regulatory purpose. So addressing, progressing, and meeting our obligations under our statutory functions. Absolutely, SIA needs to do that. The private security industry needs to play its part. It itself needs to play its part in it. It's one thing to stand on the sidelines and shout about labour provision and about cash in hand and everything else. You can only shout innocently on the sidelines if you know you're not part of that, either unwittingly or wittingly. Okay? So the industry needs to take a look sometimes at itself as well and say, how can it change things? How can it improve? And then the other part is the buyer. You're absolutely right, because the buyer, what we're talking about here is commercial commodity, aren't we, at the end of the day? We're talking about a service that's provided. And the buyer can make that decision to take that company or take that company, and they have a decision tree that they go through that drives them in one direction or another. So it's quality and the confidence in the longevity of a company who have delivered that for a period of time. Is that important? Or is it the bottom line? Is it, well, actually, do you know what? For insurance purposes, we need to have some security in place. Or our licensing condition says we need to have door supervisors out there in the nighttime economy. Is that fundamentally the core element of that decision making? Because I think you and I both know, Ian, which way that will drive, or which business type may ultimately end up being the recipient of that contract. So there is a big bit of work to be done, and we can only influence. Clearly, we can't mandate, we can only influence. But going back to what you said, in an ideal world, if the business approval scheme works out, and I'm absolutely sure it will in its best possible form, then that's something that should hopefully translate in the mind of buyers. It should make it almost a compelling position, but that's the perfect world. And I think even to get, anything over the 50% in terms of the buyer's mind would actually be really, really good, because there'll always be individuals who are driven by the bottom line. The economic pressures dictate that's where they go.
Yeah, and I think what you just said there actually brings us round onto the sort of the final piece. And I'm amazed we've spinning through the time as always here. Is that is with just to touch on with HMRC and compliance in general, because I think this ties back into the business approval process as well. If buyers, we're talking about them buying, they are, and the commoditization is absolutely right. They are commodities. Professor Alison Wakefield once described it: securities purchased like the purchasing a can of beans. Yeah, terrible. But in order to change it, do you think we ought to put more effort or emphasis on C-suite getting involved, maybe shifting the language from security to safety? Because as soon as you mention safety in C-suite, you have a different reaction.
Yeah, so we could probably discuss from an academic perspective, the pros and cons of kind of nomenclature here. Security as a contribution towards safety. Is security all safety? Is safety all security? I'd invite me back another day and then we can have that conversation.
Okay.
What I would say to you is that in current kind of acceptance of both those terms, then security will always be a significant contributor to safety because it's public safety. Of course it will. But private security industry services, they're not the full part of safety. We've got protective services as well within there. So I think yes, the buyer, we all know because it's the commercial world. The buyer holds a lot of the cards, but being able to offer, as I said, a service which is absolutely driven from quality and relevance as well. Can I say relevance is really important? So private security suppliers, and I know many I've spoken to are really intent on doing this. Want to have a service, want to have a product which meets the needs of buyers. And I think the new business approval scheme again is looking very closely at how that can be achieved also. So the approved contractor scheme, if kind of some of the criticism has been levelled, is very generic in nature. It's kind of not quite one size fits all, but almost. So if you're in a more niche world, how do you evidence that you are the quality supplier? So a business approval scheme, I know the team behind that will be looking at that over the piece.
And
but it does take
HMRC,
yeah.
HMRC, and how does that all tie into what we're doing with subbing, subcontracting?
So take you back to this, to take you back to those consultation stats just before I develop that, Ian. So from biggest percentage of respondents came from the private security industry. The three most weighted in favour responses were for greater compliance with HMRC rules, that skills was a focus part of it, and that labour provision and subcontracting became, and I'll paraphrase, but should be more controlled within it. So the second huge piece of work that's now been driven on within the SIA and in partnership, and Paul again leads on, is the one about labour exploitation. So again, we're a regulator who listens, and concerns have been raised over a period of time. Don't get us wrong, we're not blind when we go out doing inspections either. We gather information, we feed that back into our intelligence function. So it's a developing picture. We're working very closely with HMRC. We've got meetings teed up with other partner organisations who are entirely relevant in this space. I'm not wanting to steal Paul's thunder, but
go on.
In terms of publicising our approach, there may be something coming in the near future. But suffice to say, that doesn't, as I've said to you before, Ian, Purda didn't stop us working in the background. None of that stops us working. We've got a very coordinated plan developed, and already we have focused investigations around about labour exploitation concerns. But this is one where we're partnering with the industry as well is critically important. The webinar that HMRC were involved in with Michael, right. That's a wake-up call to those who are unaware of their obligations. But when they delivered the piece around about the agency legislation, that almost is a, in a moment in time, stop, think, how does the due diligence work through our supply chain? Where's the potential weaknesses in that? But actually, what's the consequences of us not getting it right? Well, actually, through the agency legislation, ultimately, principal contractors responsible where they can't evidence tax and national insurance obligations having been met in that supply chain. That's for a business, for a commercial entity, for people who are operating on reputation. That's a moment to just sit, reflect, and say, how good are we at doing that? Because at the end of the day, it's down to the absence of due diligence that allows those individuals to exploit. And then there are people out there who I would class as potential victims, who may not even see themselves as that, who don't know what their hourly rate is, who are unsure if the hours they're working. Come on. In any employment you've been involved in, Ian, have you never known how much you were getting paid? Or have you not at least had an idea of how much you were getting paid?
To the nano penny.
I would expect that answer from you. And I would certainly, had Gary been present, I would expect the same answer from him. So these are individuals, you've got to ask the question then, if you're coming in and you're delivering that service, you're being engaged to deliver that service on behalf of a labour provider or a contractor, what is it that's not motivating you to determine your hourly rate? Is it because you enjoy it so much that you're actually not interested? I would find that incredibly hard to believe.
Well, you do it at the SIA.
Well, I do, but that's because I'm just by nature, I just will always pursue what makes me happy, and that's why I do what I do. But yeah, on the serious note, we're getting an emergence of that. I think you may have seen, we just publicised an article as well about how we've changed our inspection approach. So traditionally, a lot of it used to be binary: is the person licensed, is the person not licensed? For the reasons we discussed earlier on, Ian, that people may have a license, but actually have they gone through the full training requirement? That's critical in terms of our engagement and our dialogue now. And so are the other parts of this now. So looking at the employment basis, the conditions in which people are employed, around about, do they actually have knowledge of their hourly rate and how are they paid? They're all really good indicators of where exploitation may be taking place. and then we go upstream to address that with the individuals who are responsible for that. So in partnership with HMRC and other relevant public bodies.
Well, yeah, I'm aware of the time, and given what you said about the potential for further news later on, I would like, maybe to come back and talk about that bit, because one of the things that I'm aware, and I know Gary is, and I spoke to others obviously before this meeting, is that I see how this all works for those who are operating 24/7 contracts, etc. In various locations, factory shops, retail, blah blah blah. Get it? It's when you start moving over into the social economy, that's where I think you're going to start finding. Although, and I say that because I do know that that is also happening in retail as well. Is where you're going to get more of those itinerant workers, those people most likely to be doing it cash in hand, if that makes sense. So perhaps we could talk about that, once we've got this announcement has come out. But I know Mike Kill, Annie Shabib from the UK CMA, and many, we're all on this aspect. The vast majority, have got the fingers crossed. I hope that this comes and works out for you.
Yeah, Ian, all of these pieces of the jigsaw knit together. If you genuinely want the best provision for public safety, then you have people who are suitably trained, appropriately trained, who have gone through all of the training courses, who have had the checks and balances done, the vetting done by the SIA, issued their license, then find themselves in meaningful and valuable employment, either be it on a permanent basis or an ad hoc basis. And they have a sense of value, an investment in what's delivered, then the public will be protected. And we need that's not the sole responsibility or within the capability of the SIA alone. That's a much wider thing, and that comes down to all the work on skills and everything else. It's quite a complex jigsaw, but jigsaws, irrespective of how big or how difficult they are, they all can be completed eventually. Okay, so bear that in mind. Be positive. That's all I would say.
I am forever positive. The industry is great. Listen, Ronnie, is there anything else that you want to say, or have you basically covered everything?
No, yeah. These conversations never come to a finality, do they? There will always be more to say, but I think enough for today and enough for today.
Do you know what? I agree for once. Once again, let us never forget how bad Gary was for forgetting you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've only just recovered, can I say?
The bloke's a swine. Do you know, I was told off for being mean. Somebody told me I was mean to him the other day. Somebody who watches the show says, "You're really mean to Gary." I said, "You're kidding."
I think he can stand his own ground.
I think he can as well. All right.
Okay.
Ronnie, thank you so much for your time. Everybody, peace out.
Thanks, Ian. Bye-bye.
Bye.